our other host, Mama. And today we're going to be talking more about a more serious topic. We're doing a more serious topic because we can't do all fun and games and goofs and gags, all that stuff. We do want to bring up some genuine topics and discussions and things like that once in a while. And today we're doing body image. If that is at all triggering to you, or if you are in any distress or any form of that, we do have things down in the description, places you can contact good people where you can find help for those things.
Certainly. And of course with body image, we'll probably get into discussing eating disorders as well. So again, my friends, if that is triggering to anyone, or anyone is in distress or suffering or confused about whether they are concerned with those things, links are going to be down below. We're going to try to find a link for right here in Nova Scotia. We'll have a Canada-wide one. We'll support our friends in the US, and we'll try to find support in the UK. Okay. I haven't solidified a link for the UK yet, but we'll find something. Okay.
We'll do our homework.
You're not alone. All right.
But before we do begin today, I just want to let you guys know that you should definitely hit the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing and you want to see more. That is the number one way to just be able to come back and just join us for these talks, these fun little chit chats and things like that. And you got to make sure that you're hitting that bell icon, because if you don't hit that bell icon, the algorithm and YouTube being all silly and whatnot doesn't let you know when a video is out. So make sure you hit that bell icon, and heck, why not give us a like? It helps us out and it supports the channel, and I don't know.
All right.
It's just a nice little thing you can do for us folks. So I guess we can start. Did you?
Yeah, so just real briefly, just when we were talking about the podcast, and Jess was talking about a few topics and things like that, and he said, body image may not be a bad thing to talk about. And I was quite surprised that you wanted to mention that and bring that up and discuss it. But at the same time, I know that, I guess, at some point in everyone's life, we all go through kind of an issue at some point in our lives with our body image, or questioning what we can change or do better, if we, I was surprised. But with that said, I know that you had your own challenges, and briefly, I know a little bit in terms of yours, based on a mama watching a son go from being pretty confident and comfortable in his body to no longer wanting to wear shorts, no longer wanting to really swim, which was one of your favorite things.
My favorite things to do.
Because of what you saw, I think. You didn't always go into detail back then, and so we know a little bit more now, but again, we don't know in detail. Yeah. Do you want to touch on that?
The reason I thought that it was an interesting topic to bring up is because, like you've told me many times before, like you yourself have had that issue. I feel like it's a universal term, like you were saying, like everybody at some point in their life has to have that feeling at some point.
And if not,
and hey,
like that's amazing.
Yeah.
But I feel like at some point, maybe we can all relate that we felt a little less than, or a little uncomfortable in our body. And
right.
Yeah.
And I just...
Do you want to put out, you have some information on...
I do, I could.
What body image is?
Yeah, no, of course. There we go. So I'm just going to give not full-on descriptions, but I'd say they're straight to the point, just descriptions roughly of what the term and things like that is. So body image is both the mental picture you have of your own body and how you see yourself when you look in a mirror. So it's just kind of like your personal outlook on yourself and your physical esteem and things like that.
Yeah.
And
self-esteem. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I felt like I was saying, you've told me things like that, and I definitely at a point in my life, I would argue I still kind of have those tendencies once in a while.
I would say, yeah.
But I felt like it was a topic that we both could discuss our different viewpoints and things like that on, and it could be relatable for sure. Because not a lot of people are comfortable in their own skin for a good chunk of their life, and there are places where there are ways to get help for that, and there's no shame in seeking that, or just talking to somebody, or finding a way to help cope with that sort of thing.
So when do you think that you started having your concerns about your body, or when did that switch for you?
For me,
do you remember an age?
I want to say middle school. I don't have an exact year, I don't have an exact grade, I don't have an exact age even.
Yeah.
I just know middle school was... Because I think mine, personally, there's nobody else's, I think mine is very much social based.
Okay.
Like how others view me, or how others view my body, or what others might be saying about my body, or things like that, right?
Okay, so did anyone ever insult your body? Were you ever influenced by social media in general, of what a
perfect person,
male's body would look like? I mean, is that what influenced you?
I think everyone is
right, and of course, for the most part, we hear more about the female side of how social media affects us, or how media in general, commercials and things like that. We've seen, models on magazines, and though that is changing now, from a very young age, I remember those being a big influence. And I'll talk about my story a little bit later, but going back to you, love, you were saying like middle school is kind of when you started, and that was what I remember as your mama.
Yeah.
That there was a big change. And so did you find that you were getting picked on, or were you being influenced by outside sources that you were seeing these images and going, I don't look like that? Do you want to describe what your body looked like? Because you have always been a fairly...
I am a very tall, skinny boy.
and
no. I'm
always have been.
I'm very lanky, very, I don't know.
Though you have muscle, and it's defined.
Sure.
It's a small frame. I mean, you've got wide, broad shoulders, but you are very slender. You don't have a lot of meat on your bones. I guess,
and that was the comment
that
was often made at family gatherings. I had noticed at the time. I don't know if this was always the joke or anything like that, but just around middle school, it really felt like it was pressure from different parts of my life, parts of my social life, things like that, and it's minuscule comments.
What were those comments?
You
don't have to call people out.
No,
at all. Like, that's not what this is about. I just want to get to kind of like what was said and made you start thinking like, oh my gosh, yeah, like I don't like how I look. Not putting words in your mouth at all, but you did have a hard time, and I still feel like
I don't really.
Do you remember some of the things that people said?
There's just a common one of like, get that kid a sandwich, like things like that. Definitely was being asked to go to the gym a lot with people and just work on myself, and
that was hopefully to spark an appetite because you were building muscle and things like that.
But
do you like how you look? Is that why you chose not to go to the gym? Because some boys, if ever they were asked to go to the gym at that age, one, it's not appropriate to have a kid in a gym, a registered gym, under the age of 16. And so when he was being asked these things, he was definitely younger than 16. But a lot of kids find another way to figure out how to do that. Did you find yourself doing that? Whether it's, push-ups or sit-ups, or did you find yourself going in that direction?
I loved gym. Gym was like one of my favorite classes, and it's always been.
Phys ed.
And for those of you, but I don't think it ever stopped me from doing the things I liked doing at school. It changed how I did them.
You were always physically active.
But I would stop changing into gym shorts when I play like floor hockey, or I wouldn't take off my sweater when I was playing basketball. I was still playing basketball, and I was still working the grind, and I'd say one of my best. But it would change how I would present myself because of how others. It made me feel like they had expectations for how I should be presented, and I didn't want to conform. I still wanted to be me, and I wasn't confident in myself being able to get to their expectations. So why would I?
So you were like, there's no way I'm going to meet those expectations, so I'm not going to change, but I'm going to cover my body up. And that's really what I saw. I saw this boy who was so comfortable and confident, and not cocky. I'm talking about confident. Like, he wasn't rude about it. His demeanor did not change. His personality did not change. He was just comfortable with who he is. But I did see a change. I did see you starting to cover up. I did see you starting to wear more layers. And even today, I still see you wearing more layers. You, even in the summer, it was very difficult. When we went down south, he had a hard time wearing shorts. Going to the pool with people, like complete strangers, he had a hard time, and we pretty much had to say, hey, we're on vacation. You have to at least be poolside for half an hour. Like, I didn't think I would have to compromise with my 19-year-old son to just be comfortable with that. Go swim, go enjoy yourself. You're in Florida, for goodness sake, right? So yeah, I still don't feel that you're totally comfortable.
No.
Do you feel like you're
I'm working
getting
on it.
there?
I'm getting there for sure. Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to gauge how far along in development you are, like looking at yourself. And I think personally I'm definitely working on it, but I'm also still working on where I want that to end up. Like, how far do I want to be comfortable with myself?
Right.
Have
you analyzed it enough to really articulate exactly what you need to say about it? And like, for me, I'm ready to disclose information, and I've been slowly putting things out there and not hiding so much. And do you feel that you are ready to fully put words to those feelings and those thoughts, and start analyzing the moments that those statements or those images that you were influenced by started impacting you? I know you've disclosed a bit, but are you still just kind of working on that and processing
I'm
it?
ready to say it. I just don't know what to start off with. So very much like, you ask a question, I'll give my answer. I can't just autobiography.
It's not a running reel.
Yeah. That's just how I am as a person. I can't give a full-on explanation of something without the prompt.
Right. Yeah. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about
by all means,
my experiences.
Yeah.
So I'm a twin. I'm a fraternal twin, so myself and my twin do not look alike. She's the older, I'm the younger. She's blonde haired, blue eyed, I'm dark eyes, brown eyes. So there was always differences between us. And so because of those differences, I think that people could find our differences and comparisons, and they definitely voiced them. My twin sister was on the thinner side, and because I was slightly bigger than her, the nickname I had received was Chubby. Mm-hmm. And if you look at us side by side as babies, we were pretty close, pretty even. As toddlers, we were pretty close, pretty even. Was I built a little differently? Yes, but we were pretty close, right? When I was like, preschool age, is when the differences really started to show. So I don't even know so much preschool, because we were almost about even then, like looking at the photos, because I've had this image in my head that I was chubby, and looking at the photos kind of shocked me, because I was just like kind of like going, wait a minute, I was average size. Like I wasn't chubby, I wasn't fat, I wasn't any of these things that I had pictured. And so when we went into primary school is where I really noticed the big difference. And so my sister being thinner, and a thinner face, a thinner bone structure, she was, I think, 1 or 2 sizes smaller than me based on our clothes that we purchased. So if we were 5 years old, my mom would purchase me, say, size 5 or 5X clothing. My sister would get 4 or that kind of thing. It was never that she was like in size 3 when I was in size 5. And then as we got a little bit older, of course, our shapes changed. I noticed that, my sister would be 10 pounds lighter than me, but never anything so drastic, until she had a surgery and she ended up losing more weight. And I mean, she was thin. It's true. But I think that image of myself and the title, the nickname of Chubby, I think it just kind of distorted my perception of myself.
Would you say that was the thing that made the snap? Like that was the thing that clicked in your head for sure and started pushing you to think that of yourself?
Yeah, because I think that, and I mean, no one's right or wrong in this situation whatsoever. I mean, I lived in a time when people got nicknames, and my brother, Uncle Mark, his nickname was Peanut, right? Like, I mean, it was just nicknames, okay? So it was not meant as a malicious thing. It was not meant as a hurtful thing back then. But I don't think people fully understood that those things that are being said could follow someone.
The volume of such a simple act.
Right. And so already having this distortion in my mind, and living how I live and who I am, I've always been a perfectionist. I've always been someone who tried to overcome obstacles, and I worked really, really hard. And again, differences and comparisons with a twin was a struggle. And I'm sure that, if I was to ever have her sitting here beside me, I'm sure that she could mention the struggles that she had based on our differences and comparisons that people had given her. I was considered pretty, I was considered smart, but I wasn't thin. And so having that perfectionism definitely I tried to figure out ways that I could be the best at everything. And I think that that's when the body image became such an issue. And so I can remember at the age of 10, definitely playing into, wait a minute, if I don't do this, then I may result in this. And let me tell you, my twin sister ate more than me, and she was thin, right? She was skinny. She got the nickname of Skinny Minnie. I got chubby, like, so again, it's those distorted thoughts and images that I can remember, you know, pinching my belly. I can remember like touching my thighs in the mirror or looking down at them. And I remember saying, well, if I eat a little bit less, maybe I'll weigh less. And I don't remember ever like on TV or anyone in school talking about ways to lose weight. Like, I don't remember that at all. You know, I mean, back then they talked about exercise, and that had nothing to do with like your size of your body. That was just for health. I mean, exercise, you know, we had PDA growing up, right? So you'd have like a half an hour of like, you know, jumping jacks and a variety of things. PDA was personal development activity or something like that. That was done right beside our desk, right? And so that was just get active, you know. And exercise videos would be, you know, commercialized and things like that. But again, it wasn't to result in a slender, like very thin body, because back then women had curves and it was appropriate, and they wore these, you know, leotards and these belts. I mean, listen, I grew up in the 80s, okay? I'm an 80s baby. So we were stylish, but it wasn't that it was like stick thin was healthy. So like, I never was taught if you cut back on the calories, and what the frick was a calorie back then, right? I didn't learn about that stuff until like I got a little bit older. So automatically my head went as a young child, as, you know, a preteen, 10 years old, saying, okay, if I do this, maybe I won't weigh as much. Maybe I'll lose a little weight. Maybe I'll look a little more like my sister, and then I'll be perfect. So, and then things got definitely darker, and we'll, as I got a little older, and we'll definitely touch on that for sure. So yeah, my body image was definitely, and I say was, but I really do mean my body image still is a struggle and is still distorted. So, yeah. In terms of saying that things got darker, and please stop me at any time if you have any questions, because I am at a point in my life where I have nothing to hide. There is no shame, there is no guilt associated with the things that I felt, the things that I experienced. I'm ready to share it, and I'm open with it. And, you know, it started getting open with my mental illnesses and the things that I struggle with. And now this is just another form of, you know, another one of the diagnoses that I have. And I won't go into every detail about the diagnosis, but like, this is just another aspect of me, and I am me, and I am ready to live truthfully and fully me. And I think that shedding this information and putting it out there can only help, and I'm hoping that it doesn't harm. And so that's why it's very important that if you are in need of help or support, or you're feeling alone, please, again, go to one of the links down below and talk to someone, reach out, do anything you need to do talk to your mom and dad, talk to a sister, talk to a best friend, a brother. So as I got a little bit older, I can remember being about 11 and a half, almost 12. And I can remember that my restriction of food was becoming such an issue that I was passing out at school. And I ended up going to the hospital, and that was when, my mom met me at the hospital, and it was, disclosed that, she's restricting and she needs to eat. And so, my parents, being who they were, and most parents back then, so it's not insulting who my parents were. My parents are educated people. It's just the fact that back then, no one knew much about this stuff. And it was a closet situation, no one should know this, right? Like, that's shame on the family. That's, our secret, whatever it may be. And so I can remember my parents being very strict. Like, I had to eat dinner, and I had to pack a lunch and show them that I packed a lunch, and had to eat breakfast. And so it became like, very like food focused, and for a period of time. And I can remember, packing lunches and giving them to friends or people at school. I can remember then thinking, okay, well, they're making me eat. What can I do? Because I don't want this in my body, and I don't want to gain weight. And that was when I first remember going to the bathroom and throwing up. And, a lot of people are like, the ad with the toothbrush, gagging and stuff like that. And I honestly just had to really start thinking about how disgusting I looked, and how disgusting I would look even more so if I didn't get the food out of my body. And so just in those thoughts, it brought on purging, vomiting. And then I would start to struggle a bit, and then I would start to use my finger and start gagging and that. So, it just went on. Then I was afraid that someone would find out that, I was making these noises in the bathroom, and we only had one bathroom in the home at the time. And so, then I started to becoming more aware of that. And then I can remember having an ice cream bucket and had a lid on it. And so when everyone else was asleep, I would purge in this bucket in the middle of the night so that I could get the food out of my body. And I would sneak that down, and I would wash it and rinse it, flush it down the toilet in the middle of the night, so that people would just, I wouldn't be in the bathroom for any great length of time. And that's what I did. And then something happened that all of a sudden I just didn't care. I actually started, whether it was I had a growth spurt or whatever, but I started to thin out even more. I started to kind of like how I looked. I started having more friends, more fun. I can remember back to those darker times that I just wanted to look like these 3 popular girls in my class, and they were the beautiful girls. And I wanted to be friends with them, and no one liked me. No one wanted to be my friend. I was the new kid in the class, and I felt very lost. And then I felt like, I don't know, if I was thinner, if I was more, I would be more beautiful, and then people would like me. So yeah. But then, like I said, then things kind of changed, and that wasn't a part of my life for quite some time. And unfortunately, it has crept back into my life again as an adult. And it didn't start until about a year and a half ago in my weight loss journey. And I started to notice that I was getting very mindful of restriction and mindful of what calories went in my body and making sure they were good, healthy food. And I would make sure that I would not have certain foods, and I was very strict. And then I started noticing that with restriction, okay, let's just back up. So I went from one extreme to another as a younger teenager to then, like, after having my babies and, you know, just not being well, and I started having a bad relationship with food, and I guess weight just kept packing on. And I don't know if I could say I had a binge eating disorder, but I definitely abused food. I couldn't get enough food, and like, food was a comfort. Food was what brought me happiness. Food was what kept me awake because I was just so exhausted all the time. I was so sad all the time. And so when I finally was like, no, I don't want to do this to myself anymore, and I kind of was like, I had this epiphany moment, and then I was like, I'm going to do something about it. And I went about losing my weight for the first year, very healthy, watching what I ate, exercising. We did practice intermittent fasting, and it worked. And then after I noticed that I was in a bit of a plateau, and I knew that I still didn't meet my weight loss goal, that I had to keep going and I had to keep upping the ante. So then it was longer fasting time. It was then eventually it was, you know, days would go by, and I still practice that today, which is where, you know, almost a year and a half ago, this is when, like, the switch flipped. It was no longer a healthy way to go about losing the weight. It became more obsessive, and the longer I restricted, then it was almost like the better I felt. But then if I did break a fast before I met my goal for the fast, I would then punish myself by binging and self-sabotaging. And then I started the purging process, and I needed to get that out of my body as quickly as possible. But before I would even purge, I would weigh myself so that I knew exactly how much I had to purge. So that I would be at the weight that I was before I started eating breaking that fast. And so that's where we are at today. In terms of, I remember when I first started, I would get very upset, and I would push you, your brother, and Dad away so that I would be alone and isolated so that I could do what I needed to do. And originally it would start, you know, in a bathroom that generally only I use, and I was very secretive, and then I would start using like buckets or pails because I would run out of energy and I wouldn't be able to stand any longer. I wouldn't be able to kneel any longer. So I would sit on the couch and I would, cover it with a blanket so that if someone came down the stairs, like I would hide it, or I would hide it behind the couch or the door so that no one could see it. And then when people were asleep, then I would flush and rinse and clean and blah, blah, blah. And then it got to a point where I started associating those things as being dirty and gross, and so then I would start drawing baths, and I'd be in the bath for anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, purging and dehydrating so that more weight could be lost. And then I came to a point where it was just like, I just didn't care, but it was getting so difficult to purge. So then I started abusing laxatives. And it was very secretive again. I started buying the laxatives by myself, and then I started eventually not caring who knew about it anymore. And I think Dad was the first person who caught on to the things that I was doing. And then I needed to have it that I wasn't hiding that stuff and not isolating myself anymore. So we started talking a little more, and the struggles, and trying to look at other ways to not take it and flip it, like break a fast, meet my goal, break a fast, and use that fuel, that food as fuel, and accept it as fuel. And it's not a bad thing, it's a positive thing, it's a good thing. You need that for your body. And Dad would try to referee, making sure that I wouldn't go past a point, because he could see that in my face. He could see the struggle, the internal struggle that I had. And as soon as I ate one more bite than I had planned on, a switch would flip. And yeah, I'm at a point where I am seeking help for the first time in my adult life. So the first time in like 20 years, I can actually say that I'm only 7 pounds away from my actual weight loss goal. And that feels good, but how I got here doesn't feel good. And then where do I go from here? Because I don't want to be like this for the rest of my life. I want to be able to have a good relationship with food, and I need to let go of food guilt, and I need to accept what food is meant to do for my body. And it's okay if I have, a treat, and let that just be a treat and cut it off there, instead of, trying to punish myself by eating more and feeling awful. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm in the process of seeking help and figuring out how to navigate through these next few chapters of this journey, and trying to do it in a more healthy way. In terms of like body image, I don't think a skinny skin and bones body of a woman is beautiful. That is not what my goal is. My ideal body, and I will never see bones and skin on this body ever. That's not how I was ever made. I see a toned and shaped, healthy body, and that's what I want. So I'm hoping that with help and the right strengthening and toning programs and physical activity and nutrition, I will meet that goal and hopefully deal with all this other stuff so that I don't run into these issues again, and understand what my triggers are, and not necessarily that I have to avoid my triggers, but how can I account for them, accept them, and release myself of them as triggers. We don't hear very often about guys with eating disorders or body image issues. And that's very sad to me, because you clearly do go through that. And maybe you haven't had an eating disorder, but you've had, have you?
No, I definitely not. Like I
mean, you and your brother have always been kids who have intuitively eaten. If you were hungry, you ate.
You ate, yeah.
Were you the regular 3 meal a day kind of guys and, 2 or 3 snacks a day? No. But when you ate, you were hungry. When you were done, you were done. There was never, we made you clean a plate off. Like, there was none of that, right? Like, eat what you felt you needed to eat to feel satiated, and you felt good, and you were done. But men, young men, boys, do suffer with eating disorders, and it's fact, touched on some information regarding the statistics for anorexia and bulimia, and how, the number for women is, or girls, female gender, is like 10 times more than men and the male gender. And I'm wondering if that's because as a male...
Well, do you think it's because they're not
reported?
Yeah, no,
it's not reported.
No, that's strongly what I believe too. It's because people aren't. If you're either not asking or being told. You know what I mean? So they're not asking all of men. Like, you know what I mean?
I feel like the, statistics are made up.
Well, it's...
And the questions are being asked to young girls in school.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But we cannot
single out.
Yes.
Like
just based on gender.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
just because it's more common or it was more heard about. And again, that's because that was asked or that was told more. You know what I mean? So there was more attention brought to it because it's more known.
Well,
just because it's more known.
In history, the physique of a woman has always been at the forefront. And it's always been like, oh, that's important. Like, looks matter, body shape matters for a woman. And, what a pretty body shape or the ideal body shape has changed over the years for women. The same as haircuts for men, right? Of course, haircuts for women as well. But you can see in history how things have changed. But for the most part, like, a man's physique and things like that was not really like at the forefront of advertisements and things like that until later on, when you look at, bodybuilding magazines and athletic magazines, and that's where you see these bodies of these ideal male body types. But it wasn't so much so advertised, you know, way back when. You know, a man looked good in a suit, and that was really publicized, you know, back when my dad was growing up and stuff, right? Like, it wasn't that you saw a man, like, you know, flexing and... Anyway, I don't know. I feel like we need to not single out just girls associated with eating disorders. And of course, reading some of the statistics, of course, they're saying like men and women are equal when it comes to binge eating disorder. And I'm like, yeah, because you can see binge eating disorder, like before someone sees, you know, anorexia, you have to be pretty thin, or there has to be a drastic weight change.
Well, there's always a way to hide it and things like that.
Right? I mean...
But you can't hide when it's very clear that you have
gained weight
or things like
or how much you are putting in your body. And there are people like, I mean, I would only eat small portions, say at work, in front of people, but I was coming home and I was probably consuming a good 5,000 calories in an evening. And today I have a hard time consuming 800 calories in one sitting. So I don't know, like it's frustrating. I think that people need to be open and talk about these things. And if you have a son and you notice that, you know, he's no longer wearing swim shorts, or he's covering himself up, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to say, hey, if you don't want to talk to me about it, would you like to talk to the doctor? Would you like to talk to dad? Would you, like, find help? And I think that that's kind of really the message for today is like, no one is shielded from this. No one is protected from this completely. You are affected whether, you know, the things that I've done in my behaviors, how has that affected you? And maybe that's something that you can touch on, right? Yeah, so maybe what we'll do is because obviously you have a parent who has experienced things and you've noticed things. So I'd love to see or hear your point of view, and I hope that you would open up about that today, because I'm okay with you doing that.
For me personally,
and let's just be honest, right? Like, we're gonna do this in front of the camera at the end of the day, but it's okay. Say what you have to say, because sometimes people who are going through things need to hear how this is affecting you. How
it's scary. It's scary.
When was the first time that you noticed that, and what was the first thing that you noticed that you were kind of like going, hey, should I be worrying a little bit about mama? Or, ooh, is that normal?
Well, I catch on to things pretty quick. So from an early point, I could tell what the bucket was for, or the pail, or the things that you would use to purge, and so that it wasn't bothering us, even though it was very well taken care of and it wasn't like there was no odor, or, you know, you washed it out and you made sure that we wouldn't notice. I still noticed, because what else would that be used for? And you were going through things.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries.
In the very beginning, I didn't leave the cup in the sink. But towards the end, it was almost like, you know, like when people do things because it's a cry for help, and it's not like I needed you guys to help me. It wasn't my cry for help. I don't know if it was or not. I was just ready to expose it, right? And so I would leave the cup in the sink after being washed out, but I would leave it there. And we're talking about like a big gulp kind of cup, all right? It's not like a little cup. But I would leave it out. So obviously you caught on.
Yep. And it's scary. And it's tragic because it made me feel like if that's what's going on with her, and we're very much alike in my opinion and my observations and everybody's observations, I'd say we're very alike. So if that's what's going on with her, it would make me go, well, what's going to happen with me? Where's my turn on this going to start happening? How early is that going to start? When am I going to start feeling like I need to use those sort of things? And how do I help, or how do I change that? How do I change that about you? How do I help you? And it almost puts a pressure on so many levels and so many sides of it, because of course I wanted to help, but there's literally nothing I can do to change how. Ooh.
Sorry.
That was my work alarm. There's nothing I could have done at that point that could have really aided. I could have talked, but I didn't know how to start that conversation. So it was scary because this thing was clearly happening and this thing was clearly hurting you. But I couldn't do anything because, at that age, it's not like I could just talk about that. It was something that you would have to come to me about or something. And I just wanted you to find someone to talk to. I wanted you to get help. I wanted you to find a way to combat this thing that was eating you alive.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it was just very scary. It's hard to watch a loved one go through anything in general. This was difficult because it very clearly took over your life. You became physically incapable of doing things that you would do with me and my brother, what you would do with our family. You couldn't, and
because in the beginning of the weight loss, I felt like I was getting my life back in terms of like I had a lot of energy. I started feeling physically better because of the weight loss. But then, because of the drastic amount of time with the restriction, I was quite weakened. And even though I would put food in my body, it wouldn't stay in my body very long. So, yeah, I would tire very quickly. I am at a point where I am constantly cold. So yeah, I constantly have to be under blankets or layers, and I hide it pretty damn good at work in my physical way, and in an emotional way. I've become very good at giving my all to work, and especially my patients. But it's unfair because I don't have enough reserve for my family and the people that truly mean the most to me. So all I can say is I am sorry, and know that I will try my very best to get the help I need to combat that. And with that said, family members of people who are struggling, there's help for you as well, and support out there for you as well. So most of the links down below have a section for loved ones, family members, friends, because you need support too. Yeah. none of this, and this is what I want you to take from this, and your brother and dad, is that none of this is your fault. None of this was brought on by anything that you did or the lack of what you've done. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I can only imagine how helpless and hopeless Dad feels, and you and your brother at the end of the day as well. But nothing you guys would have said or done would have helped at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a control thing. Yeah. This is my struggle. This is my struggle to be perfect, to seek that perfection. And though there's other things in my life that are aligning, this is not. The same as the one last thing I had to look at was my body weight. And that's why, I made that decision to start losing weight in the beginning, and now it's gone to an extreme. And I'm sorry. And if there's anything that I can do to help you cope and deal, definitely let me know. Because it's not easy. Do you have anything else that you want to say?
No. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Are you glad to have let it out? How does it, okay, that's my next question. How does it feel to let it out? To talk about
To
it?
be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And to just tell that little snippet. And I mean, I didn't go into full details. There's still so much more that can be said. It's freeing. It's freeing. And I'm hoping that this is just the next step. This is admitting,
Mm-hmm.
accepting, and now I have to get past this chapter and start writing the next. And I'm excited about that, and I'm ready to work on that and to grow from that, because I really just want to be the best version of me, and that is what I am trying to achieve here at the end of the day. And maybe my struggle, maybe my story is a little different than someone else's, but that's okay. We all have our struggles, and we all have our obstacles that we have to overcome, and we need to understand that we can overcome them, and we should never use those as excuses or things to hold us back. We need to move forward, and we need to make them matter. We need to learn from this. I need to learn from this. And it's just another experience, another scar that I wear on myself, and I will overcome it, and it will make me stronger. Yeah. How do you feel in terms of Is there anything else that you want to add? Like,
No.
all right, guys. So I'm sorry that was a tough one this week. Hopefully next week is going to be a little lighter. We haven't talked about that topic, but for next week, but we'll make it a little lighter, okay? I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support that you guys have been giving us. And if you want to see more of us, we do have an Instagram. So check us out there. You can follow us on Instagram as well as Snapchat. We do have a Facebook group, but we don't really do a lot there. Anyway, it is what it is. So again, if you like the content that you're seeing, you like what we're chatting about, definitely subscribe, my friends. Hit that bell icon, you know, so that you can get those notifications of when we post. Give us a like. It does help our channel. And we wish you well. And we hope you are all doing well. I think that's it. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye!
Ow! Oh, it's not funny, dude. I sneezed my brains out. Ow!
Are you good?
No, I'm not good. That's gonna bother you. There's just a pile.
Okay, well, we'll just leave it there for now.
Okay.
We'll deal with it after.
Oh, we're rolling.